Welcome to Beware Spoilers. I am Adam. It is currently 37 degrees out, and I have just seen House of Gucci. I also watched, independent of that, I watched Hawkeye, but that's a story for another day. That's a tomorrow morning thing, not a right now thing, because does he take priority, because I just watched this. So, House of Gucci. Let's start out with, I have two big problems with this movie. Number one is a very superficial thing that you can kind of figure out, like, not figure out, but like, it's filmmaking fundamentals. Pacing. Maybe not filmmaking fundamentals, maybe, narrative fundamentals, narrative storytelling fundamentals. But pacing, it's a key part of telling any story. It's making sure that your story is not too slow, the time frames make sense, and everything kind of lines up, and all of that. And part of that is showing the passage of time. That's a key part of pacing. Because what you have to do is you have to illustrate to me, the audience, or anyone in the audience, not specifically me, anyone who's in the audience. I'm sorry if my voice sounds weird. It's very cold, and I'm heating up as we speak. So, the key is you have to illustrate to the audience that there is a passage of time happening, and the time frame over which this time is passing makes sense. So, this movie has a fundamental issue with that, and it's going to alter the context around which you see it, because the movie takes place over the course of 17 years, because it starts in 78 and ends in 95. So over the course of that 17 years, that's a lot of time to elapse. The movie doesn't tell you how much time is elapsing between scenes, and it just kind of you just go along the way, and it just kind of happens. It's like you're not getting a sense of how much time is passing in between, because when time elapses between scenes, you get the chance to do implicit character development. You can, the audience can extrapolate what's happening in the relationship. But the way this movie is shot and the way the movie is edited together, you don't get a sense of scale of time. You don't get a sense that time is elapsing in a meaningful way that's going to that's going to make it where these characters acting in the way they are makes sense. Because it's almost like on a hairpin that we see Lady Gaga's character turn, but years elapse between scenes, and we don't know how long that is. The only marker of time passing is seeing the daughter age, because the daughter ages between scenes, but you don't really. Besides that, you don't get a sense that time, anything has changed in between the scenes, other than it could be a day, it could be a week, it could be years. And I think that's a fundamental failing of any narrative, anything, be it a feature, a short, be it a scripted series, be it what's the other one that I'm thinking of? A book. I blanked on book. Oh my god, I'm cold. So that's a big part of this. That's a big part of my problem with this movie to begin with. The second thing is that there's not enough use of the House of Gucci, the titular House of Gucci, as a character. And it's when you watch, Daredevil is a great example of this, where there's a character in the show, in that the scene, the setting of Hell's Kitchen is in itself a character that changes and evolves over the course of the show to match the tone of where the show is and what's going on. you get that with, like, in Harry Potter, Hogwarts. The castle changes, and what we see of the castle changes, and what we need to know about the castle changes as the show goes on, and as the books go on, and as the movies go on, because that's a key piece of it, because it's, it's designed to reflect the mood of the school. Gotham City in the Dark Knight trilogy is constantly changing over the course of it, and as the stakes change, the city changes, and all of that is, information that gets relayed to the audience visually. And here we have a problem. Here we have a problem with, what's it called? The House of Gucci could be that for this movie. And I don't like being the armchair writer who's like, well, if I was doing it, this is what I would have done. But this is a fairly, not commonplace, but it's definitely not a new thing to be doing. And that's having your setting or a key inanimate or intangible plot device or setting or other thing reflect what's going on in the movie. And I think that when you look at, like, how Maurizio is and how Patricia is, when you see that, they're not altering the perception of what's going on. And, like, the House of Gucci could be, and like, the brand and the way the company is are not reflected in what's going on. There's no change there. It's kind of, and yeah, there's an argument to be made for the brand, considering the brand is still around today, and these incidents that happened back then did not kill the brand then. So there's definitely a case to be made that the stoicism of the brand is an integral part of the story, because all of this nonsense happening around it kind of, influencing but not influencing, the company is a choice too. But I feel like had it reflected more accurately what was going on, especially when we're dealing with financial problems, and we're dealing, like, big parts of this movie have to do with the financial dealings of Gucci, and a lot of it comes out of left field, where it's like, oh, by the way, your uncle was committing bank fraud. Oh, by the way, like, you're running us up hundreds of millions of dollars in debt. Like all of these things are kind of out of left field, and it's like, it's not a narrative reason for it. It feels like this movie is long, and it's like we need to make it shorter. Like, and the fact that they made it shorter and it's still like 2.5 hours long is like, well, you definitely could have cut some stuff here. And it's one of those things that never ceases to amaze me is when someone makes a movie this fucking long that just kind of meanders and doesn't really have a point. It reminds me of, like, it's not going to make the teacher look great in this regard, but, like, when I was in high school, this girl went off on a tangent in class once, and she's talking about, she's talking about Nostradamus, if I remember correctly, but she's going off on this tangent, and because she's going off on this tangent, the teacher doesn't really want to interrupt her, but he just goes, see, this is why when you start talking, it's good to have a point. And it's one of those things, it's mean, but it's a important thing, especially if it applies to narrative storytelling. If you're going to go off on this 2.5 hour long tangent, try to have a point. And I think that the thing is, it's like, if you're going to tell a story like this about this family drama that leads to murder, because that's ultimately what this comes down to, is it's a nonfiction story about this, but it doesn't take a stance. Like, it doesn't take, like, ultimately, it's weird because, like, they go out of their way to make Patricia look like she was in the right the whole time, and then it's like, oh, and by the way, now she's on trial for murder because she had her husband killed. And that's another thing, too, where, like, I'm watching this and it's like, oh, well, because they don't give you a sense of time, it's like, how long has it been since they separated until now? Like, how long was this going on? Like, that's a key piece of information that would show her mental degradation of her mental state over the course of the movie, but they don't give you that information in any way. It's like, all of a sudden, it's like she shows up at the house at the end, after the husband dies, and she goes into the house, and it's like, oh, there's this, like, teenager. It's like, oh, I guess that's the daughter. Like, cool. So, and the thing is, too, this is another one of those movies that has a lot of narrative issues, but is elevated by outstanding acting performances. Like, Belfast was similar in that it's got narrative issues. It doesn't really want to, take a stance, which is ultimately the most boring thing a work of a movie can do. Because it's like, what's the point of telling a story if the story doesn't have a stance or a slant to it? There needs to be a reason the story's being told. And if you're just relaying to me this, it might as well be the dramatization on the History Channel. Like when they do a History Channel reenactment of it. And that doesn't feel right for a movie that costs this much money to make, and then you're going to make me sit in a theater for 2 hours and 40 minutes to watch. That's a big failing of this movie. That said, it's not bad. It's just painfully inoffensive in a way that's kind of weird. And it's like, well, and Jared Leto is fucking annoying through this entire movie. I don't know what it is about him as an actor, but he just gets on my nerves. It's like, he's just annoying through the entire thing. And it's like, besides him, it's an all-star. And the thing is, too, I can't even discount him as not being part of an all-star cast, because he got an Academy Award at this point. But, like, besides him, it's like Lady Gaga is fantastic in this movie. Even if the shortcomings with her character are not because of her, it's because the story kind of sidelines her, like, halfway through. And it's like, well, that's the thing, too. It's like the movie can't make up its mind about what it wants you to keep your eyes on, and that's ultimately when you're making a movie, it's kind of like sleight of hand. You have to keep your attention over here while we do this, and then it all come together at the end, and it's like, oh, cool, here's the big trick. The movie can't make up its mind about what the trick is going to end up being, or anything like that, so it just kind of like, it's kind of directing your attention everywhere, real scattershot, but with no real impact. I think this movie probably would have been better as an American Crime Story, considering they did American Crime Story, the assassination of Gianni Versace, and that was, that got, an Emmy win for, Darren Criss, I believe his name is, who played Harry Potter in a Harry Potter musical, and he also played, the Music Meister in, what was it, the Flash Supergirl crossover. I don't want to say it's a tightrope to walk, because, like, it's kind of like they saw the tightrope and then didn't attempt to walk it. They just kind of swan dived off the thing into the net and just kind of hoped for the best. Or, like, it's like going to a diving contest and doing a cannonball. Like, you got into the water, but you didn't do what you were there for. So, I don't know. I feel like this movie has everything there. Like, it's got great production design, which is an important thing for a movie like this. All of that kind of, like, the wardrobing, the costuming, all of that is great. I just can't quite, like, the narrative problems with this movie. Unlike, say, Joker, where we can put them aside and say, look, the movie has its narrative issues, but Joaquin Phoenix is putting on a fantastic performance, and that's entertaining to watch. Like, this doesn't have that to be able to point at and say, well, it fails here, but there's something else there that we can point to and say, like, oh, that's good enough instead. And I think that's a big problem with this movie. It's not great. It's not worth on your Thanksgiving weekend going to go see. I don't think, because it's the kind of movie where it's like, it's gonna, based on the fact that it's coming out now, it's gonna be out on DVD before the Academy Awards, and I know for a fact right now that Lady Gaga is gonna get nominated for Best Actress in a Leading Role for this, and I feel like there's a strong chance that Jared Leto also gets an Academy Award nomination for, what's it called, Best Actor in a Supporting Role. But really, if we look at this movie, it is a DVD movie. It's a Redbox movie. It's an HBO movie. It's not a, and I think that, like, even to an extent, The Last Duel was that too. So, it's not a great kind of year for, what's it called? And by the way, I have now seen 2 movies by Ridley Scott in the last 30 days. Of those 2 movies, both of them ended with the death of Adam Driver. Both of them had Adam Driver have sex multiple times. I did not need to see that. And I guess I don't feel like this movie, really accomplished what it and both of them, he's doing a fucking weird accent. And it's like, I know it's a minor thing, but there is no reason why, besides the fact that they do eventually go to New York, but when they're in Italy, and they're all Italian, and it's 1978, there is no reason why Lady Gaga and Adam Driver are talking to each other in Italian accents. I'm sorry, in English. They should be speaking Italian. In the same way when you watch The Godfather, when they go to Italy, they are speaking Italian and not speaking in Italian accents. It's just kind of stupid, because it's like, it doesn't quite make sense, and it's like, it's just something that kind of bothers me. Because, like, you could have done this story about, the class struggle of her coming up and trying to take what's hers after being downtrodden because she came up from a poor family. You could have done that. You could have done any number of other storylines to make this a cohesive kind of thing, but you didn't do any of them. And for that reason, I can't recommend seeing this movie in theaters, especially when it's like, if you want to see a good movie in theaters, like Dune is in theaters. Like Dune was playing opposite this, and I'm sitting in there, and I'm sitting through this movie, it's this fucking long. I could have gone and seen Dune again, and that would have been more enjoyable. I could have gone and saw Eternals again, and that would have been more enjoyable. I could have gone and sat in my car and watched Hawkeye again, and had another 40 minutes left over after. And that would have been more enjoyable, even though I did not like Hawkeye very much. But we'll get to that another time. That said, it's one of those things where it's like, if you're going to go to the movies this weekend, I would have to say, don't see this one. It's not great. It's not worth the time and energy to go and see this movie. Our next episode is going to be, we got 2 tomorrow, which is fun because it's Thanksgiving and I, have to record 2 episodes. Armageddon Part 2, because that comes out, that came out yesterday, but I watch it the next day on the CW app. So that's one, and then the second one is, what's it called? The second one is, Hawkeye. And then at some point this weekend we will also have 2 other movies, one other movie. I think it's going to end up being Encanto, but I'm not 100% certain yet. So I'll keep you posted as I find out what's going on. So until the next episode about Hawkeye or The Flash, whichever one goes up first, have a great rest of your week.